Christopher was a regular man, a fisherman in a small village to whom no one except his family ever paid attention. He worked hard every day, waking up at 4 a.m. and often not returning to his small humble home until 6 p.m., working on his fishing boat to feed his wife and 2-year-old little girl. Every year he made a little bit more money than the last year. Despite this, Christopher found himself struggling more and more every year just to make ends meet. If the politicians say the economy is getting better, why am I struggling? Christopher thought. Well, there's nothing I can do about it except just work hard every day, so off to work I go. With that, he kissed his still sleeping wife goodbye, left home, and hopped on his bicycle. The sun had not yet risen, and the deep blue sea was calm and ideal for fishing as Christopher pulled up to the beach where his boat was docked. He picked up the anchor and drove his small fishing boat 30 kilometers offshore to his usual spot and let his fishing net out as the sun made her appearance on the horizon. Exhausted from the previous day, he decided to take a quick morning nap. By the time he woke up, he could tell by the tilt of his boat and the drag of the nets on his boat that his catch was going to be an exceptionally good one. Either that, or he had just caught a whale. As he hauled the net up from the depths of the sea, his instincts were confirmed. The catch was as good as any he had had in over 6 months. Happy times, Christopher thought, as he hauled the catch onto his boat and packed it into the ice hatch below the deck. On the opposite side of town, Jamie was just waking up. The sun had just started to peek through the windows of his massive master bedroom in his mansion. Jamie lazily sauntered over to the bathroom, a room as big as was Christopher's entire home, and turned on the shower heads. Jamie was a successful banker with one of the largest global banks in the world, and his occupation had afforded him vast riches and a type of luxurious lifestyle that made people notice him everywhere he went. Jamie hopped into his red Lamborghini Aventador and drove to the docks where his 30-meter luxury yacht was docked. Though only half the year had passed, Jamie had already cleared $30 million in salary and stock options, so he had decided to take a couple of days off. This is the life, Jamie thought. I hardly ever work, and the money just keeps coming in. As Jamie boarded the yacht, he climbed onto the top deck, peered out to sea with his binoculars, and spotted the lineup of fishing boats on the horizon. Jamie thought to himself, "Thank God I'm not one of them." Meanwhile, back on Christopher's boat, Christopher had just finished packing the last fish in the ice storage hatch down into the belly of his boat. Because Christopher ran a solo operation, harvesting a large catch was grueling work, and it took him 2.5 hours to complete hauling, unloading, and packing his catch. Normally, Christopher would stay out to sea for a second catch around dusk, but today, the morning catch was so good that he decided to pull up anchor and call it a day. As he pulled up his anchor, dark clouds suddenly appeared on the horizon. As Christopher started his journey back to shore, within 30 minutes, the waves had grown to 1 meter in height and water had begun to spill onto his deck. The dark clouds seemingly sped from the horizon to his boat in no time, bringing furious rain with them. For the first time, as violent waves tossed about Christopher's boat like a rag doll, worry filled Christopher's mind. Christopher had been through bad weather before, but he knew that this was far more serious than the other times. It only took a few more minutes before his worries were realized. Another fishing boat, heading back to shore, slammed into his boat and tore a half-meter hole into his hull. With his boat quickly taking on water, though Christopher was racked with fear, he was also racked with grief as he was reluctant to abandon a catch that he knew could financially provide for him and his family for the rest of the year. Though deep down, Christopher knew that his boat would never make it back to shore with his catch. He stayed on board until the last possible minute before finally leaping off his fishing boat. Distraught about losing his catch and his boat, for a minute, as his boat sank to the bottom of the ocean, Christopher thought about ending it all. Life is such a struggle. Let me just die in peace, he thought. But as his lungs burned for air, his thoughts turned to his wife and daughter, and he knew he had to live. He kicked furiously, and just when he thought he could not hold his breath a second longer, he broke the surface of the sea and gasped furiously for oxygen. The sea cared not for Christopher's grief and slammed waves into his face, forcing Christopher to swallow bitter mouthfuls of seawater. Christopher knew that 2 kilometers from land, he might still drown if he didn't quickly find something to help him with his journey back to land. In his grief about losing his catch, Christopher had stupidly forgotten to even salvage a life jacket. And a spot of luck, in a disastrous day, Christopher spotted an orange life jacket from his fishing boat floating just 10 meters away. He quickly swam towards it, retrieved it, and put it on. Meanwhile, a kilometer away, Jamie was faring no better. A huge 10-meter rogue wave had slammed into his yacht, toppled it, and sank, spitting Jamie into the sea, despite Jamie's belief that he and his yacht were invincible from the sea's winds. Jamie was unfazed by the prospect of losing his $5.5 million yacht, as he knew he could easily buy 2 more tomorrow. With only thoughts of survival on his mind, Jamie had been lucid enough to grab the lifeboat before his yacht sank. Alone, cold, and scared, and in a lifeboat no more than a couple meters wide that an angry sea was tossing about like a rag doll, Jamie was more scared than he had ever been before. Half a kilometer east, Christopher had his own life and death scenario that consumed him. Intent on staying alive for his wife and his daughter, Christopher scanned the sea and quickly found the shore. He soon realized that the ocean currents were dragging him further out to sea, so he quickly pivoted in the ocean in an attempt to find a way out of the current he was trapped in. 100 meters to his right, he noticed that the floating debris in the ocean was moving landward. He knew that to save himself, he would immediately need to escape the current he was in. He began swimming to his right towards the landward-bound current, and 10 minutes later, Christopher had begun floating towards shore. He sighed a huge sigh of relief, took a brief moment to catch his breath, and started slowly swimming to shore. 2 hours later, with the storm still raging on, an exhausted Christopher arrived at the beach. Crying in joy, he crawled onto the sand and collapsed face down. Back out at sea, Jamie was having an even worse day than Christopher. The ocean current had taken Jamie further out to sea, and he could no longer see any signs of land. Jamie was wondering now if his decision to stay in the lifeboat instead of swimming for land when he could still see it would be a decision that cost him his life. Furthermore, tomorrow was Saturday, so no one would even know he was missing from work for at least 2 more days. And to top off his troubles, Jamie was in the middle of a divorce with his wife, and knew that his wife would be happy to have the house without his company, and would not even worry about the fact that he was missing. Back on shore, Christopher was so exhausted that he didn't notice the large amount of people that had gathered around him. The first people to grab Christopher and help him to his feet were his wife and his daughter. "Oh my gosh, we thought you were dead," his wife cried. "Thank you, God, for answering our prayers." As soon as he stood up, Christopher's rubbery legs were unable to support him, and he fell from his wife's arms and collapsed to the ground. "I'm a doctor. Give me some room," a man announced as he moved to Christopher's side. "Here's some water," another woman announced as she handed the doctor a bottle of mineral water. Christopher did not recognize the doctor, but he recognized the woman Anne as one of his regular customers. "And here's some food. Give him some food. He must be hungry." A young boy appeared before him and handed him a bowl of home-cooked food. Christopher recognized the boy as Pablo, the son of another one of his regulars. "We heard that you lost a huge catch in the storm and your boat," a third customer Christopher recognized as Mike shouted. "I took up a collection to help you and your family back on your feet as you recuperate." Mike handed Christopher's wife a wad of cash. Christopher wondered how Mike already knew so much about his tragedy. He thought, "It's mental. that just 2 hours ago I was thinking about ending it all. Why? Why have you done all of this for me? Christopher mumbled. Anne spoke up. I remember one time when I didn't have enough money to pay you and you still gave me a fish so my family could eat. I know you don't have much, Mike said, but you always throw in an extra fish for me and my family at no charge when you know my family is struggling. You're part of our family, Anne chimed again, sparking shouts of agreement from at least 2 dozen others, and we always take care of our own in times of need. Back at sea, Jamie thought about who might search for him, and he couldn't think of a single person. Every day, when he drove to work in his Lamborghini or his Bugatti, he passed by the homes of his neighbors that he had foreclosed upon. He knew that they wouldn't care about him. Besides, after losing their homes, they were forced to move and wouldn't even notice him missing. He didn't know any of the new people that had moved into these homes just a few months ago. He thought about his clients safely on land, and he knew that he had told many of them to buy stocks, bonds, life insurance, and all kinds of other products that they had lost lots of money on and that had made him rich. It wasn't just about making mistakes because everyone makes mistakes. It was the fact that he had deliberately lied to them to build his own financial security. He wasn't sure if they knew that he had lied to them when he told them to buy these products that he knew were bad for them, but he knew that they had blamed him for their losses and were unlikely to help him. Wow, Jamie thought, it really is up to me and only me to get back to shore safely. After drinking the water Anne had given him, eating the food that Pablo had given him, and the doctor declared him dehydrated but otherwise fine, Christopher felt much better. As soon as he could muster the strength to speak, he told the men of other fishermen that were still stranded out at sea and needed help. The storm had not yet passed, but the sea was not nearly as violent as it had been when it had swallowed Christopher's boat. Upon hearing of other fishermen stranded in the ocean, some of the other fishermen Christopher had recognized on the beach had already set off in their small longboats to rescue them. Though it was still dangerous for them to push off in such conditions, the other fishermen did not hesitate for even a second when it came to rescuing their stranded brothers and sisters out at sea. 3 hours later, they returned with 12 men in their boats. "We think we got them all," a returning fisherman announced. Christopher was still waiting on the beach and hugged all of the rescued fishermen, overcome with joy to see them alive. Happy that his fellow fishermen had been rescued and unaware that Jamie was still stranded out at sea, Christopher headed home with his family. 2 days later, and Jamie was still aimlessly floating in his lifeboat, still with no sign of any land nearby. Last night had been a terrifying one, as he had heard large splashes all night around his lifeboat. 3 times, something large, most likely sharks, had bumped his lifeboat. Jamie knew that one bite and his lifeboat and he would be history. Though the storm had now passed, sun and dehydration had become the new enemy. With no fresh water for more than 60 hours, Jamie knew that if the sharks didn't kill him, that dehydration would in a couple more days. Faced with his mortality, Jamie, for the first time in his life, felt small and weak. Jamie knew that the $100 million he had in the bank could not save him now. He broke down and wept. "I have more than 99% of people on this planet," Jamie thought. "How can no one care enough to search for me?" And with that as his last thought, Jamie faded into a deep sleep. As Jamie slept, he dreamt of a helicopter sent by his rich banking buddies coming to save him. He heard the distinctive whirring of the helicopter's blades and even felt the blinding light being shined on his face. He even felt someone shaking his shoulders in an attempt to wake him from his delirium. "What a cruel dream," Jamie mumbled in his sleep. "Sir, are you okay?" the rescuer in Jamie's dream asked him. The same phrase was repeated, this time just a little bit louder. "Sir, are you okay?" Jamie was fully awake now. "Oh my God," Jamie thought. "This is actually happening. I'm not dreaming. Sir, I'm a Coast Guard rescue swimmer and we're here to take you home." Overwhelmed with emotion, Jamie wept. "It's okay, you're safe now," the Coast Guard rescue swimmer reassured Jamie as he clipped Jamie to his harness. The next morning, Jamie woke up in a hospital bed, barely able to remember the previous night because of his state of delirium. There were dozens of people, and Jamie had to blink several times to convince himself that he was still not dreaming.